Today, live from my house, we are doing atoms in the periodic table. So let's do a refresher. What is matter? We've already learned that matter is anything that has space and has mass. Anything that takes up space has mass. All matter, you, me, my house, my cat back here, are all made up of atoms, even this chair. So atoms are considered the building blocks of matter. It's sort of like how bricks are the building blocks of houses. Okay? So let's talk about what the atom is. And the atom is really cool. You can't see it because it's so tiny, but there's parts of it that you haven't even learned yet, and we're going to talk about those right now. So the atom has three main parts within inside of it. The first part right here, we're going to get to this in a second, but the center part of the atom, which is this right here, is known as the nucleus. All right? Within that nucleus, there are two different particles. One is called a proton, which is called positive charged particles. These are the pluses, and that's one way to remember it. The P in proton stands for plus or positive charge. That's my little clue for you. The next particle that we're going to find inside the nucleus is the neutron, and the neutron, N, stands for no charge or neutral charge. Finally, we go outside of the nucleus to these little orbitals. Think of these kind of like the orbits, like planets going around the sun. So think of the nucleus as the sun, and then of course all of these orbits are the planets. Think of these as electrons. Electrons are negatively charged particles. They're only found outside of the nucleus in these orbits, and the electrons have a minus charge. And one way to remember it is look at that letter E. It's a cheat letter. You see those three little minus signs right there in the letter E. It tells you right there that it's negative. So proton, P for positive, neutron, N, neutral or no charge, and then finally electrons outside of the nucleus are these guys, and they're negative, and there's a little minus sign to help you remember that. Now, earlier we talked about the nucleus here. Protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus, the center of the atom, and that's the nucleus right there. And the electrons orbit the nucleus. The periodic table of the elements. We're not going to spend a lot of time this year going into it. That's going to be more later, 7th, 8th, and even high school. But we're just going to talk real quick, briefly about it. The periodic table is a list of all the elements that can build matter. It's like the alphabet of chemistry. And there are 92 naturally occurring elements arranged by their atomic size. Now, elements in the periodic table are also grouped into families. Families go up and down. So think of like a family tree that you have. You know, that tree, and it branches out your different members and groups of your family. Well, that's kind of how the periodic table is. Families go up and down in columns. So those would be all these up and down groups here that you see, or columns. The other thing is that elements can be categorized into periods or horizontal rows. Elements in periods do not have similar properties, not like the families do. So anything that goes across like this, they have no properties that are like or similar. Okay? And that's just a quick overview of the periodic table. And there is a good one for you guys to see there. So here's our families up and down there. The alkali metals, alkali earth metals, transition metals, boron family, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen family. Then we have our halogens, and then we end with our noble gases there. And then of course down here we have our rare earth metals, which are down here, which are a lot of times, there are several down here which are radioactive. These are your nasty ones. Okay? Okay, so how do we read those little tiles that we see on the periodic table? Well, here's an example of oxygen. You usually will see four things. You see this number at the top, this letter, the name, and then this number here. Well, first of all, let's start. This is the atomic number at the top. The atomic number also tells you the number of protons that particular element has. Protons also equal the same number of electrons. So if there's 8 up there, 8 protons, you'll have 8 electrons. If it's 54 protons here, you'll have 54 electrons. So your P's and your E's are always the same number, and it comes right from that spot right there. Next, this one's pretty simple. This is known as our element symbol. It's the abbreviation for the element. Sometimes it's a single letter, 2 letters, or 3 letters. This is the element name. Okay, this one happens to be oxygen. Finally, this is what we call the atomic mass or the weight. How do we get this number? Well, this is your protons plus your neutrons. Or the easier way is you subtract this number from this number. So take atomic mass and you subtract it, or I'm sorry, subtract the atomic number from the atomic mass, and you will always find your neutrons. Okay? So P's and E's come from here, and to find out the neutrons, you take 16 minus 8, okay, the mass minus the number, and you will always get your neutrons. So that's how we read the periodic table, or the tile. Atomic sheet chart. This is going to help you guys out. Like I just said, the atomic number equals the number of protons. The number of protons equals the number of electrons. So these two numbers will always be the same. Your atomic mass comes from, so where does that mass come from? Well, it comes from the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. And I won't make you figure out this one. And then finally, neutrons. I will make you figure this one out, is your mass minus your atomic number. And we will do some practice in class with one of our stations, so you'll get the hang of it. And it's usually pretty easy. When we've done this in the past, 6th graders like this. They said this is pretty easy stuff for them to get. Okay, that's the end of our lesson.